why do we care so much about what people that we work with think? Like, it's almost a different dynamic. My friends at this point, whatever. Like, you guys have seen me at my absolute worst, my absolute, like, kind of best. And it doesn't matter. Like, I feel like we're all so comfortable with each other. We have a group chat called the Poop Diaries. Like, nothing matters. There's just, like, some level
this is true
of, like, caring when it comes to people that you work with where it's just different. I don't know what it is.
Wait, that's such fun timing, because I'm not kidding. Today I had another word vomit during lunch when I was like, Abby, you're a freaking idiot. Why did you say that? Like, you're so stupid. Like, you need to go and like change your name and like move somewhere else and like start all over. I had one of those, like, we don't need to get into what I said the last time. I was deeply embarrassed at work, but I was deeply embarrassed at work today, and I texted one of my friends and I told her what happened, and she was like, Abby, that's literally like not a big deal at all, and like if someone were to judge you for that, like whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, when you put it that way, I was like, I'm still deeply embarrassed, but at the end of the day, like, I can separate. Like, I'm going to separate it. Like, last time I harped on it for like several months. Like, it was all I could think about for so many months. But today I was like, you know what? It happened. Can't take it back. Gonna move on with my life.
And it's literally so interesting because I feel like we replay these memories over and over and over in our heads of like embarrassing shit that we said or like acted like, especially at work. And it's like no one else even remembers except for us.
I know.
But I think it just goes back to like, I know a lot of us girls, and not even in the workplace, like as a student, like at any point in your life, I feel like a lot of us struggle with imposter syndrome. Like even I was literally at a yoga class the other night at like Core Power Yoga, and I'm like not great at yoga, and I was like so uncomfortable being in that class because I was like, oh shit, like
you're out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm good at Pilates, I'm not great at yoga. And they were all doing their poses. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are gonna know that I don't know what I'm doing. People are gonna know I don't belong. Or if I was like looking at the person on my left to try to like do what they were doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're gonna know I'm looking at them and they're gonna think that I'm just like so lame. But I don't know why. Because
they're too busy worrying about themselves.
They're so busy like worrying about like their form or like whatever is on their head. They don't really care about me. And if I saw a girl like looking at me to try to do her form the same way, like I would never be like, oh, what a weirdo. I would be like, oh, she probably just doesn't, like whatever, that's fine. Everyone does that. But I think a lot of us, like for so many years, I know I really struggled with imposter syndrome to the point where like I literally remember when I started at my job, I convinced myself that I wasn't qualified for it, that I wasn't good at it. And whenever things would happen, like whenever good things would happen, I'd convince myself that it was either luck or like just by chance, or that like I somehow like convinced people that I knew what I was doing when I actually didn't.
You thought you were a lucky girl back then.
I always just thought like, okay, I must have just like this good thing must have happened at work because I'm lucky, not because I'm qualified, not because I'm good at what I do. And I just always convinced myself of that. And honestly, it wasn't even like me being modest. Like I wasn't like trying to be humble or modest or anything. I think I genuinely convinced myself, like believed in my core that things would just happen because I was like lucky. And I think it really was like, it took me years to realize that it really was just like me being insecure.
Right.
And I would like always try to come off as super, super confident. And I convinced myself like, okay, people think that you're this like confident person that like knows what they're doing, but like that's actually not you. So just try to keep the ruse up and like see what happens. And I feel like it took me like literally years until I was like, wait, no, maybe I actually am like good at what I do. Maybe I actually am like confident and like good at what I do. And I feel like it wasn't until I realized that I started doing better and started caring less. Like today, the white eyeliner thing, whatever. But I feel like 3 years ago, I don't know if I could have like walked into work doing something like a little different because I would be so consumed with like, what are people thinking of me right now? To the point where like I wouldn't have ever been able to do that. I don't know.
Talk about some growth.
It's just like crazy though, because I feel like so many of us like go through it. Or like we talked about this a few weeks ago, like the whole idea of like not wanting to jinx yourself. So you never say anything positive, but you're actually just like hurting yourself by doing that. And what I'm realizing lately is that like even your thoughts are like manifestations too. So if I constantly think in my head, like, you're not good at what you do, you're not smart, you're not funny, no one wants you to be here, like you're creating that dynamic for yourself, even if you're not saying it out loud, like you're thinking it.
Right.
And I feel like I've always struggled with like trying to like almost like make your thoughts be more positive. I feel like that's like the hardest thing. Like I feel like trying to like speak positive is almost easier for me than it is to think positive.
Yeah. Speak positive more than think positive.
You know what I mean? Like I feel like it's easier to be like, okay, I'm gonna manifest good things and be like, all right, you like I am successful, I am smart, like I am good at what I do. But then to actually believe that, like your thoughts, to like control your thoughts to think that way, I feel like is so much harder. At least for myself.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying it's harder to think it than it is to say it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Because well, even I struggle with saying it. Like I remember when I went to that medium a month or two ago, she literally like told me to like speak things out loud, like positive things about myself. And I think like it's one of those things where like if you don't practice it, it's never gonna like come to fruition. So it's like if you want to tell yourself like I am smart, I am successful, I am worthy, I am loved, whatever, like if you don't practice literally what you preach, like it's not going to come naturally to you. It's like if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're not practicing it daily, those thoughts aren't going to come to you naturally. Right. And it's going to be a lot harder for your brain to actually believe what you're saying.
I know. And it's almost like what came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, do you have to think it first before you say it, or should you say it in order to believe it? And I think it doesn't matter where you start. I think as long as you do it. And I think all of like the hype around like journaling and like whatever, I think that's all great. But I think that like find something that works for you and try it out. Like I know that's something I'm working on this year. I guess that is a resolution in a weird way. It's just like trying to work on like, it doesn't matter if it's a thought or something I say out loud or a journal entry, like whatever it is. I know I personally feel awkward. Like I tried to literally stand in front of the mirror in my bathroom the other morning and just like literally look at the mirror and go like,
no, that's what
Shannen,
I was told to do.
You are smart. Like Shannen, you are good at what you do. Like you're loved.
And
like,
it feels so uncomfortable.
I was literally laughing, feeling uncomfortable, but I was like, wait, like no one else is here. Like no one's laughing at me. It's literally just me, myself, and I. Like why do I feel so awkward saying this stuff? And I think it's because I've just never done it before. But the more you do it, the more comfortable you'll get. And then what my hope is that eventually that'll seep into your brain, because it really isn't good for you to constantly be like
negative thought.
Yeah. And it's, I think I listened to this podcast like a few weeks ago. It's called like Detoxing the Brain. Honestly, my church did it. So it was definitely more from like a religious perspective, which I personally really appreciate. But even if that's not something that applies to you, I think the concepts remain the same, which is that like you need to like, if you can like take a second and try to detox your brain and realize that like you're constantly saying like negative self-talk, and that's really, really bad for you.
Oh yeah.
And it's weird because I feel like you don't realize how much you're doing it until you think about how much you're doing it. Like on a given day, you're like, you get up to do something and you're like, ugh, like I don't look good today. Ugh, like I feel this. Ugh, like I have a zit. I look stupid. No one wants me to be here. Like the constant things that you're saying, or at least that I personally say to myself, I didn't even realize it until I took a step back and I was like, shit, like how do I literally like stop doing this? Right. And I think like the first step is trying to say positive things that will hopefully like one day outweigh the negative ones.
I think if even doing that is too much to start with, I feel like to begin, like it's okay if you do acknowledge the negative. Like let's just say like you have a zit on your face, just as an example. Like you can acknowledge that zit and wish it wasn't there, but like still appreciate the other good things. Like, oh, like yeah, I might have this zit, but like I'm really good at applying makeup, and I'm like my makeup looks bomb today. Like my face is slaying, or whatever the kids say. Like if you can,
my face is slaying.
I don't know what the beauty gurus say, but if you can like almost like cancel out the negative with a positive thought, I feel like that's also a good first step. And like back to like caring about what other people think, I think we're all dealt a hand of cards, and most of the time you're not showing your card to anyone. So if your cards aren't going out the way that you planned, no one else knows that. Like True. If you don't show your cards, people don't know. Like I even think back to when we first started this podcast, like we would write our outline word for word, like an actual script on what we were going to say. And if we didn't follow that script, we'd be like, oh no, like that. But people don't know. People don't know what's written on our outline.
Yeah.
Even today, like no one knows what's on our outline, and it doesn't matter because we're not showing our cards. Well,
that we never say on script. But
sometimes we don't get to them all, but that's okay.
That's okay.
But as you're not showing your cards, and it's not going to hurt. Like, the only person that you're hurting is yourself by thinking like, oh, like if this didn't go my way, like people are going to judge me. But it's like, no one knows like why you're disappointed with yourself or like what's bothering you unless you're like being vocal about it.
Yeah. No,
so just keep it to yourself.
100% agree. No, I genuinely think that's such a good point. And yeah, I think it's okay to acknowledge, because I think that there's also the side of like toxic positivity, right? Where like you're constantly like, everything is great, everything is amazing, I am fine. Like I think it's okay to
it can be
acknowledge.
aggressive.
Right. Like I think there's an element of like, no one wants the friend where you're trying to vent to them and they're like, yeah, but everything's fine, everything's great, everything like
right.
You do. There is some level of like, okay, acknowledging maybe this isn't going in my favor, but it's okay.
But try to focus on the positive and like come up with positive.
And honestly, I think the gratitude element is so important for that. Like literally the other day I was looking in the mirror and I was like, wow, I really don't feel super confident about the way I look right now. But then I was at my yoga class and there was like this really beautiful moment where the song came on and everyone was like clapping and jumping in the air. Like it was like an intense yoga class, obviously.
I was gonna say, what class
like,
are you taking?
It was like the yoga sculpt classes where it's like half hit, like cardio.
No,
half
I've
yoga.
never taken that.
So fun.
Recommend?
Yes. And they put this music on where it was like getting everyone fired up and they were like, all right, jumping jacks. We're like, everyone was doing them like in sync and we were like clapping while we were doing the jumping jacks. And I had this like moment where I was just smiling and I was looking around and I was like, I am so thankful that my body allows for me to do these jumping jacks right now and I'm dripping in sweat and I'm just having so much fun, because some people can't do that. And I think, again, it doesn't have to be like toxic positivity where you're constantly like everything is great, but I think like having little moments where you're like, wait, like I actually really am like thankful I was able to do this, or I'm thankful that my body was able to do this. I'm thankful that I have a car that gets me to work. Just like little moments like that. Like when I first moved into my apartment, I didn't want to pay for $500 a month parking, so I parked like down the street in this lot that's like $100 a month, and my walk to my car is like 10 minutes in the morning, which in the cold, like it obviously with all like I have like 3 bags I carry and stuff. In the beginning I was like, oh, that's gonna stink on days when it rains. But now I'm like, no, you know what? Like it's an opportunity for me to like
get some steps in.
Because I sit all day at work. So like that's
walk.
So it's like 20 minutes of walking I get to do a day. Like little things like that I think can help long term. If we just like try. If you put like an effort in like every single day. I feel like it's literally a relationship. If you want a relationship with, you know, my boyfriend, I'm going to talk to him and like treat him well. Like, and I feel like it took me so many years to realize that if I want a good relationship with myself, I have to treat myself well and not just be like a bitch all the time to
That's
myself.
like the hard realization. It's like, oh, I have to be nice to little me. Like, why can't I be nice to everyone else but myself?
Exactly.